say for the sake of argument, the scientific method was established more or less 500 years ago. Say, well, it was at that point where our mythological models of reality and our scientific models split. Now, I'm going to ask you to swallow a presupposition for the time being, and that presupposition is that, because it'll take me a while to explain the logic behind it. Look, you know how you get scientific information. It's basically taught to you explicitly. And you can read experiments and you read theories and so on. It's part of explicit education. But how you pick up knowledge of how to act, well, that's not quite as explicit. It's not as easy to figure out. I mean, obviously, you model. We know that children pick up a lot of information by modeling behavior, which basically means that they copy adults, and that basically means they watch adults act, move their bodies through space, and they duplicate those patterns of action, and they generalize from them. So that's one way behavioral wisdom is transmitted. Some of it's explicit as well, at least in terms of the receipt of rewards and punishments, because parents will modulate their children's behavior by engaging in motivationally significant interactions with them. At least that's what you should do if you're a parent. That's your primary responsibility in a sense. So that's what we mean when we say that you're paying attention to someone. It basically means that you're modulating their behavior with your behavior, with your emotions. So like a child will monitor, or a parent will monitor his child and react positively when something that the parent wants to happen happens, and negatively when something happens that the parent doesn't want to happen. So the child's behavior is, well, that's just classical reinforcement theory basically. You exchange rewards and punishments and threats and promises and modulate behavior. We do that all the time in our interpersonal interactions. That's part of the reason why people with personality disorders can sort of have an uncanny effect on you, which is to say that if you're personality disordered, you have a really potent expectation about how someone else will behave, usually like a son of a bitch, fundamentally. And if someone with a personality disorder encounters someone who doesn't act like that, they're a challenge to their belief system. And people with personality disorders are extremely good at turning everyone they meet into the same person that they already met. And they do that, I think, by exchanging very, very subtle and covert reinforcements, which is to say, you're engaged with me, I have a personality disorder. Every time you act properly, I'll ignore you or say something contemptuous or look away or do something quite subtle. And every time you act like a miserable bastard, which is basically what I expect, I'll at least pay some attention and possibly even reinforce you covertly. And you'll find, if you get close to me, that it's almost like you've been distorted by a gravitational field as your behavior starts getting pulled in these strange directions. Anyways, we do that to each other all the time. And one of the things you might consider is, well, our societies are very large. And we're all engaged in these patterns of mutually modifying interactions. And something emerges from that that's stable. And I guess I would say that the things I'm going to teach you about mythology are the things that I view as stable emergent properties from centuries of reciprocal interaction. So if we're engaged in some pursuit, you're going to modify me, and I'm going to modify you. And neither of us really know precisely what that means, because we're not conscious of all the reasons that we do everything. And that's I mean, it's bad enough if there's only 2 of us, but if there's like 50 of us, well then you can imagine that calculating all the permutations of the interactions becomes virtually impossible. The point is, we will settle into some sort of stable configuration, or not, or we'll all like disappear. Those are the options. And human societies do settle into stable configurations, and we don't really understand how that happens, but we have developed the ability to describe those configurations without understanding them, and I think that makes up a big part of mythology. So myths are the stories we tell ourselves about how we behave when we don't know how it is that we behave, or even why. So I'm going to file that under things to consider in the future.